I think I'm Big Meech, Larry Hoover, whipping work. Hallelujah. One nation under God. Welcome to Grown Movies and TV. I am your humble and most honorable host, Real. Back for another episode recap of that good BMF, Black Mafia Family, Season 4, Episode 4, entitled Power Tripping. And if you dig what I'm putting down, go on ahead and subscribe, player. Hit the like button. It helps me to get in the algorithm. Not keep me in. Get me in that bitch. Shit, if I was on cable, my show would have been canceled by now, But we keep it live up in here, so we don't really give a damn, But that's the shit I'm supposed to say, so I'm saying it. I understand if you don't feel like doing it, hell, I wouldn't either. And if you don't feel like doing all of that, maybe you can just put a 1 in the comments, just let me know you stopped through, It would really help, I guess. Got a good show for you. And with that said, let's just get right down to brass tacks, shall we?
House music.
So we start the episode off with these cats still somewhere in Mexico. They up in a Mexican bodega sipping water out of 40 ounce. Out the 40-ounce bottle. Now either Mexico hood as a mofo, or it's just that goddamn hot, that you need that H2O in extreme abundance. I can dig it. They making their way back to Loco crib. Stop by this spot to grab some snacks, for the rest of their voyage. And while inside, Loco spots some authority pulling up, One cat come up in there talking about pork rinds. Where they at? I'm like, okay, Mexican cats be getting down. Show ain't been on 1 minute. And we done already seen reference to 40 ounces and pork rinds. This must be the south side of Mexico or some shit. Now, as Loco is on the run, well, he ain't taking no goddamn chances. Get the ambush in the popo. And they get to de-arming these cats, all 3 of them. Like ain't nothing T and Meech can't do, They handcuffed these cats to a ceiling rack or some shit, stripped them down to their tighty whities. Loco starts shooting at their goddamn feet like dance mofos. Loco got on that chic. Dance. Dance, dance, dance. Keep on, keep on. Yowza, yowza, yowza. Y'all know what the I'm talking about. Loco was on a power trip. on some who's in charge now. And when he get his fill, tells his boy Meech to come over. He like, your turn. You know, Meech get to popping off at their toes and watching them wiggle and squirm and And while Meech is embracing this bullshit, T in the corner, like the is going on here? Like that's what we doing now? And he get the bitching. Meech and Loco looking at T like, here he go. And eventually they piece the up out of there. And after that flashback is over, we flash forward to Meech and Duffy, who got Purdy up in the spot, up at Duffy crib. You know, letting her check out some of Duffy's music. They tell her they starting their own label, want her to be their first act. And as flattered as Purdy is, she good with things, you know, the way they are, you know. Sis got a hit record out, little bit of fame, steady supply of nose candy, you know, that white girl. Like, ain't that the life any good artist aspires to have? You know, like she good with moving however the way the music business works. Ain't really buying what Meech selling, you know. She dig it though. Only thing that even got her listening is that her boss is a dick and he ain't letting her spit no bars, you know. Purdy won't be on some Lil' Kim and shit, you know. Yeah, what? You got it going on? What? Puff Daddy rocked the Hummer for the summer. I follow in the E-class with the goggles. Y'all know what the I'm talking about. You know, Purdy want to spit that hot fire. So she asking a lot of questions. And they tell her they can turn her into that hip-hop queen bee, you know. She like, can you get me to the Source Awards, though? You know, that's all the Purdy want. It's a mutual like between Meech and Purdy. Like, they both dig each other, you know. But Purdy ain't fully on board to be leaping just 'cause Meech talking. You know, she like, you got to show me. She piece up out of there. At some point wind up over Trail crib. All kinds of shit is going down up in Trail joint. Let's see. Goddamn Chef Boyardee up in the kitchen. Chefing. But he wasn't really chefing though, you know. This cat up in there, chef hat popping, chef apron popping, heating up some goddamn chicken nuggets and shit. Like, mofo, for what I'm paying for your services? I want you cooking, not baking. Like, I'm expecting some fabulous shit, like whale, quail, oxtail, like anything that end in ale. I want a pot going and some smoke rising up in that bitch. You know, don't nobody want no goddamn nuggets. Like Trail 9 and shit. This mofo Trail had 2 bucky naked chicks up on the pool table, you know, clucking, snorting, giggling, looking Uchi Wally ready. Looking goddamn ready for the Uchi Wally. Hit her where she duty at. They looked like they was ready for all of that. Them chickens was clucking. Trail wasn't paying attention to none of that. Like, for most cats, this would be an event. You know, you got some chicks up in the crib, they butt naked. You know, something is happening. But for Trail, this was like Tuesday and shit. Like it pop off like this all the damn time. This mofo Sterl up in that piece, waterboarding the mofo, drowning a cat in some dishwater, familiarizing little player with how good the Dawn detergent is, showing him how it take grease out of your goddamn way, oily skin mofo, this cat was. Sterl up in there talking to this cat like he his daddy and shit. He like, this is what happens to bad little boys who don't play my records on they station. Purdy walk up in that piece. Sterl tell her he been thinking about they convo, about a Purdy rebrand. He like, I'ma do it. Purdy like, word? You gonna let me rap? He like, hell no. No. You gonna be in a girl group with Cluck 1 and Cluck 2 over there. Destiny and the other child. He like, they going crazy for girl groups right now. She like, oh hell no. Lets him know she ain't feeling it. And he get to grabbing her ass up, drags her over to where Cluck 1 and Cluck 2 is still clucking. He like, what you say? Then he start talking to Purdy like he her daddy. Like bringing her closer to the pool table was going to help him hear better and shit, He like, daddy made you. Hit her with that, I brought you in this world and I'll take your ass out. Y'all ever get that speech from y'all mama or daddy? Well, Sterl was on that. She like, yes, daddy. Had her eyes lowered and shit. She like, yes, daddy. Like Sterl told her ass once before, don't you be eyeballing me now. Motherfuckers get some money and some power. They don't want you to look him in the eye and shit. Then he hit Purdy ass with that orange juice Jones. Like he caught Purdy cheating and shit. Told Purdy her without him was like cornflake without the milk. Not cornflakes, cornflake. I saw you and him walking in the rain. You were holding hands and I'll never be the same. Told her she wasn't shit. That she was a squirrel trying to get a nut. That's all she was. She like, well, damn, can I at least get some drugs? He like, yeah, I got you. She give him a little kiss on the cheek and takes her place around the pool table with the rest of the chickens, and they all get to clucking. Purdy ain't like that shit. Seen that she ain't really special up in that piece, And as someone with all her clothes on and a hit record, she getting treated the same as two mofos with no clothes on and no hit record. And at some point, Purdy ends up at Duffy's spot, and they tell her they all going to the Source Awards, That's like telling a 5-year-old back in the day that they was going to McDonald's. Purdy like, for real? Sterl. Tells him she's signing with them. She like, we rolling with Rush. Nah, Rush Town Management. And to welcome her to Stomping Ground Records what they do in hip-hop hood record label fashion. Well, they douse her with the record label chain, the brand, the gold or platinum, sometimes tin, hardware that usually gets snatched up. But is meant to let a mofo know who you reppin' out in them streets. Death Row, Rockefeller, Dipset, y'all seen the chains. Y'all seen the medallions. They like, this ain't a rental either. This yours, little boo-boo. And between now and when they get to leaving, Meech and Maria get a rap. And she decides to stay behind, ain't going to the Source Awards. But lets Meech know that upon his return, well, she on the menu, And while they doing all that chit-chatting, Purdy snorted like a half a gram. And the crew eventually make it out to the Source Awards, Purdy up in there looking like baby girl, You can't tell nobody, I'm talking about nobody. And they chilling backstage. All of a sudden, Trell come out of no goddamn where. Like, Purdy, the f*** you doing here? Like when your pops catch you somewhere you ain't supposed to be. He like, what the f*** you doing here? She like, I signed with Stomping Ground Records, bitch. Trell like, I don't know what the f*** you did, but we got a contract. I own your ass. T come over, what's your price? We buying you out. Trell like, mofo ain't no price. Tells Purdy, let's go. Little tension pop off, Some shoves get exchanged, but no blows were thrown. Trell like, y'all want Purdy raggedy ass? Called her raggedy. He like, y'all can have her. Says they'll talk that paperwork another day. And they all piece up out of there. Meanwhile, back in the A, Bryant come up in the Red Dog headquarters, looking for answers. Still trying to track down the infamous Don Ganko. Shows a picture of Don Ganko to Officer Hardy. Hardy confirms his familiarity. Tells Bryant if he want to catch a player, well, he need to go to where the players play, Tell him to hit the scripper spots. And after doing a little investigation, Bryant figures he gonna target the Platinum Palace. It was a good estimation. Heads down there at some point, He up in the Platinum Palace, smoking a cig, smelling like Brute and Newports. Brian don't give a good goddamn. Got himself a front row ticket to that live ass action, And what that gets you? Well, that gets you lucky. Literally and physically up in the Platinum Palace. That gets you lucky up in your grill. Busting it wide open, shaking and shit. She like, you like that ass, daddy? Brian ain't paying her ass nor face, no mind. As far as goddamn Bryant was concerned, she ain't have no ass. Like goddamn Bryant was looking around like he looking for different ass, Like, can I get her over here? What the f*** is going on up in here? Who the f*** is this Lucky chick? And I think that's how Lucky took it. Like, you have to full Bucky naked, buns on blast, glitter popping up in a mofo personal space, smelling like scripper. And he ain't even looking at you. You know. In fact, he looking past you, like next. Like he just here for the wings and shit, you know. Ain't here to look at no ass. Brian was on that, oh, it's some ass up in here? You don't say. Brian was up in that like he changed his mind, you know. 2 minutes after his ass sat down. I don't want to be a player no more. You know, got a mofo like Bryant up in the spot. Well, that can't be good, not only for your pocket or your coochie coin clip, but it can't be good for your ego, you know. Can't have no bruised ego scrippers in the script club, you know. Like ain't nothing worse than a scripper with low confidence level, you know. That ain't a money maker by no means. Goddamn Lucky trying to hold it together. Getting a little pissed. Cause Bryant was steady looking around for Don Ganko. Catches Don Ganko in the corner. Like he found him. Finds Don Ganko up in the corner getting it popping with a big batigal. Lucky get to grabbing Bryant's face. Turns his attention to her, away from Don Ganko. Tells him, look, mofo, I ain't got this booty bent over cause you player of the year and shit, you know. The is up. He looked back over for Mr. Ganko, but while he was with Lucky, Don Ganko noticed who the he was. Meeped out that bitch, you know. Meep. And Duffy ass turned into the goddamn road runner. When Bryant looked back over, all he saw was a cloud where Duffy's ass used to be. And eventually a pissed Bryant tells Lucky to get the out of his face. Lucille up at her spot, getting a rap with her cousin Sterl. Estelle up in there got Lucille fur coat on, you know. Lucille talking about how she helping all these church folk with ideas on how to solve their financial problems. Can't figure out her own damn money woes. And Estelle tell Lucille what she need to do is stop playing and apply for that goddamn welfare, you know. Ain't nothing wrong with that free money. Lucille like, I hear that. But what I'm gon' do is sell that goddamn mountain raccoon you wearing. You know. Estelle got offended like a mofo. She like, She like, what you need to do is keep this here coat. This coat has value. What you need to do, though, is sell that goddamn wedding ring you ain't even wearing no more. She like, sell that shit. Lucille like, you know what? That motherfucking ring is out of here, you know. Especially after Charles told her ass last episode. He about to start taking chicks out and shit, you know. Lucille like, f***ing right. F*** Charles and f*** that goddamn ring. And at some point later, as she eyeing up the pawn shop receipt after doing the pawn deal, selling the goddamn ring, Charles come up in the room, tells Lucille some good news. He like, I'm about to go back on tour with the Campbell brothers. She like, oh, cool, that's cool. When you leaving though, player? He like 2 months. Now while Lucille ain't speaking verbally, her immediate eye rolling and cutting said it all. Like mother damn. Charles was cool about it though, He like, you want me out sooner? And she tell Charles, hell yeah. Said like, I'm trying to get that welfare check, I'm trying to get that welfare money. And they won't give it to me, 'cause you here, Didn't Charles go back to working at GM though? Charles like, I'll be out of here soon enough. She look at his ass like, whatever, He peace up out of there. Speaking of Charles, well, my man Charles is on his heavy D, He got his own thing. We got our own thing. Y'all know what the I'm talking about. Charles in the mood for love, Not the Slick Rick version. Not the Louis Armstrong version. I'm talking that Darla and Alfalfa version. Charles on that Little Rascals. I'm in the mood for love. Charles is on that Darla and Alfalfa. I'm in the mood for love. Simply because you're near me. Honey, but when you're near me, I'm in the mood for love. Because at some point, he end up back at the restaurant, making eyes, looking at CC real creepy, According to Nikki, who's also waitressing at T-Spot. And he and CC make some time to go on a little date later that night, to get a little date wrap. And they go on the damn date, walking off the meal afterwards. It looked like everything is going fine. Conversation turns to exes. And she tell Charles, well, her ex was jealous, was stalking and following her ass around. And they come in close for a little kiss, All of a sudden it becomes apparent that CCX still following her ass. This mofo yell out from nowhere. He like, CC, the f*** is going on here? She like, oh my goodness, what is going on? I have no idea what is going on. She like, did you follow me? Like her response made me think this chick set the whole shit up. Like she liked the fact that her man, ex-man, whoever the f*** he is jealous and be setting little date scenarios up like this so her man or ex-man can fawn over her and fight for her ass, And Charles, well, he just the latest caught up in some of her twisted shit, Motherfuckers like, CC, what the f*** is going on here? Charles got on some, look, brother, it ain't gotta be like this, At Charles' age, you ain't looking for no trouble. Especially nothing physical. Like you don't go around looking for that shit. You too old. This mofo get to hitting Charles' ass with a right cross. Pulled it all the way back on Charles' ass. Came down on his grill like bow. Cat tell Charles, look, I ain't your brother. He like, this chick right here, CC, well, she mine, player. Then he tells CC, let's go. Charles looked offended as a mofo when he got hit too, didn't he? Charles looked offended as a mother. And why wouldn't he be? Charles was looking like every last one of his goddamn feelings was hurt. Like mother what? Next thing we know, Charles hit his ass with some goddamn Def Jam Fight for New York video game shit, Charles hooked his ass, snuffed him. Threw his ass up against a car, then threw his ass to the ground, like Charles' ass was going for extra points on his ass whooping. Beat the bejesus out of player ass. Avery, what they call him. CC in the goddamn background going, Avery, Avery. Charles had his ass on the ground going to work. I seen the Holy Ghost trying to get up out of Avery ass. Like this fight is not the Lord's. It's yours, mofo. Goddamn Charles found himself disgruntled on top of this mofo ass. Motherfucking Charles was disgruntled. Every snap Lucille ever cracked, his money situation, any bad shit that ever happened to Charles in recent times came the fuck out. Charles let all that shit out. This mother Avery caught Charles on the wrong mother day, didn't he? Wife won his ass out. Wife won his ass out. Goddamn job ain't fulfilling. Ain't paying the bills. Music career ain't working like he wanted to. Like this mofo just found himself to be the next victim of an episode of When Keeping It Real Goes the Wrong. Him and CC's lining a mofo up ass. Charles beat the devil out of his ass. Charles beat the devil out of his ass, didn't he? I was up out of my seat like Rocky was fighting and shit. Like, yeah, Charles, yeah. Cause with every punch, it felt like Charles was getting stronger, didn't it? My man was laying there looking like the Elephant Man after Charles touched his ass up. Had that mofo looking like Sloth off the Goonies and shit. Rocky Road? CC was looking horrified. Now let's go back to what Avery said before that ass got mopped. He said, let's go. Like if a mofo say let's go in a scenario like that, they still connected, still seeing each other, or at least did so recently. Shit, they might even still be living with each other. We gon' see. Now let's go back to Nikki for a second. So that same day Nikki found out her pops was talking to her co-worker. She waiting tables. Meets Worm, one of T's guys, the player who Pay got docked for falling outside the dress code, when he stepped in the diner some time back. Ain't have on the same shoes, shoe color. She like, what can I get you? He like, I'm looking right at it. She thinking Worm was on that cameo, I can see it when you walk, even when you talk, it takes over me. Looks like candy. She thought Worm was on that cameo, was checking her out, looking at her like she was some candy. She tell him she taken. And he tells her he work with T, and his orders are to take her ass home when she done with her shift. And they get a little back and forth. Worm got on that LL Cool J big old butt, I was at the mall, sipping on a milkshake, playing the wall, taking the break. Worm was like, when you get off work, I'll be back. Worm come back around 5, pick little Nikki up. And they get a little chit-chat in the car, He tell Nikki he go to college too. She like, I would have never guessed that. He like, what, you ain't never met a brother who sold drugs and got educated at the same time? He like, I'm just hustling till I can get a legit career, I ain't trying to be Bodie about this bitch, forever hustling. Ain't trying to sell drugs forever. I feel that. And they get a good little rap. Nikki get back to the crib, got LaWanda up in her kitchen again, like she ain't learned the last time. And at some point they get a little rap. Nikki called LaWanda a beauty school dropout and shit, LaWanda sensing a disturbance in the force with Nikki vibe, She a little too friendly, She like, what the f*** is going on with you? Feel like you about to breeze out on Breeze and shit, spill them beans. And Nikki get to telling LaWanda she kinda digging Worm, from T Crew. LaWanda like, oh shit. Try to give Nikki some good advice, some guidance. But Nikki was on that grown, liking the fact that it feels like her time, and it was her time. Got the college popping off. Cats is digging her. She tell LaWanda, shit, she grown. She like a little playette gon' play. Worm come back to the shop to get her the next day. She closing up. Worm lighting up a blunt. Ain't nobody up in there but Nikki and Worm. She like, puff, puff, pass, mofo. You know how it go. He like, oh, hell nah. No can do. You trying to get me killed up in here. I can't be passing off no blunts to the boss's little sister, She tell him to puff, puff, pass. Well, she gonna tell T that he ain't taking care of her right. She like, I'm good for it. Tells him she can suck and blow. Now, I know TV living rooms across the world all let out the same gasp at the same time. Like, no, not little Nikki, Lord, it was too much for me. That's when you know your ass is getting old. Don't want to be hearing about no teenage sucking and blowing. But hear it I did. We all did. And as the player he was, he like, is that right? Like that right there. She come over and take a pull. Then he take a pull. He like, I can taste your lip gloss. It tastes good. She like, it's cherry. She like, it's cherry. But not in a sexy way, like in your little sister type way. Like she describing her ring pop flavor. She sitting there like she waiting for the goddamn ravage. Worm like, you want it? She like, yeah. And at some point, these two little players get to knocking some goddamn boots. Give me some good love. Somebody knocking the boots. That's all I need. I know that shit was horrible. You know, they get to knocking boots right up on the table. You know, next to the goddamn syrup and salt shaker, you know. Goddamn cleanup on aisle 2 was next. Breeze what? Breeze who? Breeze what? Fuck a goddamn Breeze. Breeze was up out of here. Meanwhile, before shit up in the restaurant went waitresses gone wild. Well, T was up in the spot with Hope. Had B-Mickie come up in that piece, you know. Told him to take his damn clothes off. Made him strip down to his tighty whities, you know. They don't trust his ass. And T tell B-Mickie he need him and Hoop to keep eyes on someone whose loyalty is suspect as hell right now. And they get to following Markesha ass, who they find coming up out the prison. You know, they catch her on a Boom visit. Boom was up in the clink, mind on his honey, honey on his mind. You know, Boom was all about some ass. He like, I can't wait until you can break me off a piece of that Kit Kat, little boo. God damn, I can smell it. She like, and I can't wait till you find me another cat who wants some wholesale drugs. She all about the drugs. You know, she tell him, goddamn, Isaac Roberts almost had her ass up in here with him. She up in there talking about the boys been asking about you, you know. Lying her ass off, she ain't even seen them little motherfuckers. Hell, we ain't seen them kids since the first season we seen Markesha, you know. Them kids stay at their grandmama's. Markesha just be passing through and shit, you know. Shit, I forgot Markesha even had kids. Then they get to watching her a little more, you know, B-Mickie and Hope. Catch her ass coming out of a restaurant with that arrogant ass cop Vince, the one T had beef with, you know. Was a little handsy with Markesha too, you know. They like, oh, Markesha ain't shit. And they get back and tell T. And T break B-Mickie off with the money he need for his daughter's surgery. This mofo B-Mickie was Back in the game, wasn't he? Shit, the Flennories had his ass straight. Like a day or so ago, Lucille had hit him off with some dizzo from the Benevolent Fund. This cat B-Mickie had a little stack, didn't he? And at some point, T come back to the loo, looking forward to connecting with Loco. But Meech like that ain't gonna happen. Like I already met with him, player. You know, T wanna have some of his folks from the D up in the loo, 'cause he don't trust Pusha. But Meech like, nah, he good with Pusha. He wanna keep the focus of they crew in the A and in the D. Tells him if this music thing gonna work, well, they gonna need J-Pusha help. And they head over to J-Pusha's spot, you know, get the smoking, drinking that Henny out the bottle. Pusha got his goddamn little brother Carter doing odd jobs for his ass. You know, this mofo moving pinball machines around and shit, you know, with a messed up goddamn finger, you know. Got his ass doing 10 finger assignments, you know, when this motherfucker only got 9 good fingers. Carter struggling, hating Pusha ass, you know, for what he put him through, you know. T come in, tell Pusha about the chain of command, you know. Pusha sold all them drugs, you know, ain't telling nobody, just went and sold them. And Meech backed T up, surprisingly. Some point they leave out, get to going to a gambling spot on a riverboat. And that's where they meet up with Loco. Pusha start trying to talk to Loco, you know. But Meech doing all the talking, you know, even for Loco. Like, stop playing, mofo. I see you. Trying to get close to my plug. Don't even play it. You know, ain't nobody talking to my plug. You can see him, but this motherfucker don't talk, you know. All of a sudden, the Moors come in, you know, start messing with young Carter. With him about his finger and shit, you know. Carter ain't feeling these cats at all, you know, the goddamn Moors. Ain't feeling this little predicament he in with this finger situation, you know, due to his brother's dealings and happenings. All this mofo wanted to do is play some goddamn ball. Now he can't even do that. His finger up. He getting teased about it, constantly reminded that now he got a little disability because of his brother. This mofo drunk, bothered, high, all the things, you know. And they piece up out of there. And he catch a ride with T, you know, and they get a little rap, you know. Carter get to complaining about Pusha ass, you know, how much he hate Pusha. And they connect on getting caught up in they brother's shit, you know. Like the other brother is the one that got all the shit going on, and they just happen to fall victim to they brother's shit. Then a drunk ass Carter fall the fuck asleep, like I'm about to do. And as everybody else go about their business, will Pusha get on his, and at some point meets up with Loco and Javier out at a plane. You know, they expecting Meech, but they get J-Pusha. They like, where the is Meech? Pusha like, his head ain't in the game. He done left town. You got me to deal with. And he tell him he just wanted to meet him, you know. Suggest they get some business popping without Meech. They looking at him like this mofo. They tell him first impressions is everything. They like, we seen how you move to work. Pusha thinking they feeling his ass, but they really letting him know that they see his ambition, you know, because here he is, behind his man Meech back, snaking, being a lowly snake. Listen, f***ing around in them streets, well, you could get it f***ed up, thinking there's one way with a cat, with a crew, but it's the other. Like Marlo once stated from The Wire, fuck around and find your ass slumped over, up in the game. Don't get it twisted.